All right, today I'm with James Lilley with Bare Knuckle Boxing, and he's got an event coming up here March 24th. And for you guys internationally here in the United States or Canada, you can get it for only $6.49. It's under $7 on the pay-per-view, and that's at Channel Fight. Let me make sure I have the right. Channel. I believe it's Channel Fight tickets. I'll post
That
that.
that's correct. Yeah, I think it's channelfight.com, I think it's called.
Yeah, let me. I thought I had it in front of me. Sorry, guys, but yeah, I'll have all the links and stuff in the description. But you can't beat it for $7. You got, of course, Phil Baroni there, but James Lilley had a dominant performance last time. Really, you held the center of the ring really well, and you just kind of pushed the pace where you wanted it. And you had like nice sights, like shot selection. You didn't overextend or anything, so it looked very crisp. I mean, for your first time, I mean, what was your? Did you know anything about this guy, or did you just kind of know? Like, how did you know what you wanted to do with that?
Um, it was more sort of my preparation rather than the opponent, because the opponent changed in the last 2 weeks. I was due to fight a guy from Bristol, and he pulled out due to an injury, I believe. So they brung in another fighter who's quite well known on the unlicensed circuit and is about to turn pro with the boxing. So it was his debut as well. I'd seen a couple of his fights online and knew he liked to come forward and he was a bit of a brawler. But it was more down to one of the guys who's my trainer, a guy called Darren Pullman. He's big into his boxing and big into his boxing history, and he's got all these old books about the bare knuckle fighters from the valleys in Wales, how they used to work down the coal mines and then go fighting after work for a couple of extra pennies just so they could feed their families. So he studied that for years, and because of that, and because I train with him, he's changed my style of fighting. So obviously with the bare knuckle, you don't have the gloves to protect your face, so it's more moving your shoulders and your arms to get out of the way of the shot. So, and like you said, the shot selection is important, because if you throw one to the head and it's angled wrong, that could be my hand broken, and that could be the end of the fight. So I went to the body a lot more, which I don't usually do. I'm more of a head hunter, but it was about being smarter. A lot of people just think the bare knuckles like a street fight, and you see these videos on YouTube. But the way BKB are doing it, they're refining it, and they're trying to sort of get it off the ground into the mainstream.
Yeah, I as an MMA fan, I grew up, kind of at the perfect time where it was bare knuckle MMA, and
Yeah, of
so
course.
it's great to see bare knuckle boxing like this. I had made a mistake the other day. I thought BKB was part of that Vice, but I think is it a different promotion entirely from the I think it's B Bad bare knuckle.
You be bad, is that right?
I think that's what it was called. It was like it was on Vice. I thought it was BKB, but I think that was a different promotion out there. Um,
I I, I think You Be Bad's the parent company. And their first couple of shows were sort of like in barns and um,
yeah, I
cotton
love that. It
mills.
was like some Fight Club.
Exactly. But I think the guys, Joe Brown and Jim Freeman, they came along and they saw it. And like you said, with MMA, like if you watch the first UFC fights, the first UFC one, the cage was pretty shoddy. There's people turning up in gis with like one boxing glove on, and that's kind of how the BKB was. And now they're refining it, and I think they're hoping that like the UFC once, because they're bringing in ex UFC stars, ex Bellator stars, ex professional boxers, and they're just trying to make it like a new and growing sport. And I'm pretty excited about the way it's going.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very successful. I think there's a lot of people that it just because the way that the fights take place, the style of it's different than say gloved boxing. Um, it's almost I think almost like a faster pace. And so I think a lot of people once they see it will really enjoy it. And for you, I don't know, did you because you've done MMA as well, and so Did you start with boxing though, or did you start with MMA and then transition to boxing, or how'd that play out for you?
Well, it was boxing to begin with. I started sort of around 12 years old. Just went into a boxing gym. Hadn't done any other sports. Wasn't really good at any other sports, and grew up through the amateur rankings. Turned professional at a young age, because someone told me at sort of 19, you can fight for money. So I was like, oh, right, well, it's better than fighting for free. And then as I said, my friend who's making his UFC debut tomorrow, John Phillips, was doing MMA, and he said, "Oh, why didn't you come along?" And I thought, "Oh, you watch it on TV, it said like UFC one and stuff," and I was like, "Oh, it's a bit brutal." And he's like, "No, it's not like that anymore." So he kind of got me into it. So I was sort of fluttering between pro boxing and MMA, but without slagging pro boxing off a bit too much, there's a lot of politics involved. You're waiting around a long time for fights. So while I was waiting around, another friend of mine, Dino Gambatessa, had started his own MMA promotion, and I said, "Can you get me on the bill?" So I started fighting MMA again, and then on my own podcast, we had a bare knuckle fighter on, a local guy, Sean George, and I was listening to the podcast because I wasn't involved in that when I was in camp at the time, and I thought, this is something I fancy. So yeah, I kind of flirted between pro boxing and MMA, but now it's just purely bare knuckle for the minute, unless I can get some MMA in between sort of the shows. But they're putting quite a few shows on a year, and I'm contracted not to fight 4 weeks before, so it's difficult to get anything in between.
Yeah. Well, because I noticed after the fight you had mentioned you want to grow with the company with BKB, so that's cool. A lot of fighters, I wish they would kind of take that approach more than, hey, I can make a couple bucks and go over here, then go over there. So I guess you're committed kind of to continuing to fight for bare knuckle for foreseeable future.
Yeah, I said I've got a contract signed with them. They've got shows. They've got this show in March now at the end of the 24th. Then they've got one in June, one in July. So that's 4 shows, before the summer. And I think they're going to try and get another 2 or 3 in the winter. So it doesn't give me a lot of downtime with my job as well and the family. There's not a lot of respite. So which is good because if you're only fighting every sort of 3 months in between, you can put on weight, and it's hard to stay off the beer and everything else that's involved. So yeah, I'll stick with it. Said if there does come an opportunity to fight MMA, because I'm still involved in sort of heavily involved in an MMA gym, then I'll take the opportunity. But I said it has to suit my schedule, and I don't want to too much because I know spring chicken anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean it's great that you can kind of go in between both. So I guess it keeps it your options open, and I guess the variety too. So do you feel like your MMA helps like in bare knuckle back? Like has it anything kind of that you could take from MMA and kind of use in bare knuckle, like just either training styles or maybe even some hand. I know because you don't have to worry about kicks or anything, but is there any kind of anything technique wise or anything you have been able to take from MMA and work on it in because with MMA you do have smaller gloves, so has anything really has been useful to take into bare knuckle?
Yeah, as I said, I'm a stand-up fighter. My A game is stand-up. So obviously training MMA, you've got the smaller gloves on again. So when you're blocking shots, again, you don't have that extra cushion around your hand like you do in boxing. So you can't hide behind your hands. Again, MMA sort of prepared me for slipping and sliding with my arms raised up high or moving my shoulder. And again, it's the same with like head kicks. If you're fighting sort of K1 or kickboxing, again, if they're taking a head kick, you've got that little bit of cushion with a glove. With MMA, the glove's weight is barely not there. It's just more sort of around the wrist. So again, it's just getting your hands up and raising your elbow to block those shots. So I'd say and I think that's why they've got quite a few MMA guys involved in the BKB rather than pro boxers, because the MMA guys are used to, not having that extra protection on their hands and for their guard. So I think if you're a good stand-up MMA fighter, I think it might be an easier transition than a pro boxer. But obviously, the pro boxers coming over would be a little bit more polished in the boxing style, but then they might not be used to fighting with no gloves on, whereas the MMA guys, they're probably as close to fighting with nothing on than as possible, really, than as BKB.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be crazy going from 8 or 10 ounces to nothing, because you have to change your whole style at that point. You can't even fight the same way anymore.
Yeah, it's a strange feeling. That I said I threw a couple of shots to begin with, and I've never really had trouble with my hands, but I hurt my hand in an MMA fight in November. So the first punch I threw, I could feel my hand was swelling up under the wraps, and then when I've taken a shot, rather than it being sort of like a thump you get with a glove, because they're wearing just wraps, it's more of a burn, and it's a weird sensation, to be honest. It's nothing like with the gloves on. It's a completely different feeling.
And well, I want to ask you one one pro boxing question. And that is, who do you have in this rematch? Triple G and Canelo.
Do you know what? I'm a big Canelo fan. I've always liked him, and my heart usually rules my choices. But with this, dodgy meat story that's come out, and the positive test, I kind of want Triple G to win now, and I think if any of the two fighters were going to improve, it would have been Canelo, because he's younger. But I don't know. Triple G got robbed the first time, so unless something dramatic happens, I can't see Triple G winning again on points. In the States. But I do want Triple G to win now because of this. But I'd say my verdict would be Canelo, but I'd want Triple G to win because of this dodgy meat and story.
Yeah, well, and hopefully they don't have Adelaide Bird there this time, and
I heard she's back judging.
Yeah, judging MMA and everything. Should be banned at this point. But you know what? How does the judging? Because I've got to go back and I got to watch the whole BKB 9. But I watched your fight, of course. But how does the judging and the rules kind of work with BKB? How does that differ from traditional boxing?
Well, the biggest thing that if you've on my fight you've noticed is that once I put my opponent down with a body shot, I went to the neutral corner, the ref counted to 10. I turned to the crowd, started celebrating, my corner started celebrating, all my traveling friends and family started celebrating, only for the referee to shout at me, get back to the corner, because there was a 20-second count, which someone had told me beforehand, but obviously in the heat of the moment, and being so used to boxing, I thought it was a 10 count. So that's one of the biggest differences, is that there's a 20-second count if you get you down your opponent. Another big thing, which I think is a great idea, and I think MMA and boxing could use it, is they've got a doctor ringside. And the doctor's got a red towel. So whereas your corner can throw in the towel to stop the fight if they think you're in trouble, the doctor's also got this red towel which he can throw in at any time if he thinks you're taking too much damage. And that's more because obviously we're not wearing the gloves, and you get more facial damage, more cuts. So the referee's got this towel that he can stop the fight at any time, and I think that's a great idea, because we often criticize corners for not stopping a fight soon enough, or a referee for stopping the fight not soon enough, or we criticize them for stopping it too early. And it's always a problem for the corner. They want their fighter to do their best, but they still got to look after their best interest. So if a doctor does it, it's hard to argue with a doctor, and it takes away the blame from the corner or the referee. So I think it's a great idea, and I think it should be introduced into more sports, especially with all the safety issues some of the sports have had recently.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's genius, actually. I didn't even notice that because I noticed I'll have to, because when I watched your fight, it was a ref stoppage, um, but or is it TKO? But I think if I'm sorry, my memory can be fuzzy sometimes.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, the corner through the towel in after. I think I put him down a couple of times in the second round, and then the referee the corner through the towel in.
Oh, it was the corner? Okay, okay. Well, yeah, but I mean, still that's well, it's good on the corners part too, because I know sometimes the corners, really should stop and they don't. And it's like, you gotta just know when to throw in the towel, But
It's kind of it's hard for the corner. I've cornered boys myself, and you want to give your fighter every chance, and if you pull them out too early, they're obviously going to blame you. And if you pull them out too late, something bad could happen. So I think having that extra person deciding, like the doctor, rather than the referee sending him over to check cuts, and the doctor thinks he's in trouble, I think that's a great idea. And again, you can't then sort of argue with a doctor if he thinks you're in a bit of trouble.
yeah, so um, again, that's something I want to see, like you as well, because I didn't even know about that till now. But yeah, I'd like to see that implemented in boxing and MMA and kick, all the combat sports. Really, it should be put in there. But yeah, I want you to let everybody know too. James has his own podcast as well. So if you wanted to just kind of plug that, I'd like to, let people know how they can hear your podcast. It's called the Turn the Lights Out podcast. You can get it on Twitter at TTLO podcast. And
That's right, yeah.
So yeah, so how did you start that? How did that come to be?
It was pretty much like yourself. I was involved in a gym, and one of the coaches there, me and him are boxing MMA mad. So after every session, we'd be standing there talking, and we'd end up talking for like half hour, 45 minutes, and often someone in the gym would come over and join in the discussion, or just listen to us. And he introduced me to podcasts. The only other podcasts I'd listened to were like what was it called, Serial and Shit Town Alabama and stuff like that. So I'd only listen to like the crime ones. So he introduced me to like Joe Rogan. So I was listening to Joe Rogan quite a lot. Then I thought, oh, this is a good idea. And he said, come on, let's start talking about it. That there's none in Wales at the moment. There's none talking about it, and it took off from there. We've had people contacting us from different countries asking to come on, and to be honest, we're not that consistent because I can be in fight camp quite a lot, so it's hard for me to nail down a week. We've had some good guests on. Local TV station filmed a few episodes with us with guests on. So yeah, and like yourself, it's just a conversation with friends or conversation with new people, and it's about something we love. So if any of your listeners want to hear different side from the other side of the pond, there's two Welsh guys, and we swear a lot. So if they
that's always good.
Yeah, we swear a lot. And it's just fun. Two guys just talking about local fighting, and we're on iTunes, and I should have really had my co-host with me because he's the technical guy. I'm just a fighter. So, but yeah, you can catch us on Twitter. I think we got our own Facebook page as well, and we're on Instagram. The same tags at TTLO Podcast. So if anyone wants to see, a Welsh view on things, tune in.
Yeah, so guys, definitely check that out. Again, I'll have all the links and I'll have the links. I'll get the iTunes link and all that and put it all into the description as well. But yeah, it's been good having you on here. One quick thing though, I want to get in because we mentioned briefly UFC London. John Phillips, right? Your training, one of your training partners, one of your gym.
Well, he's relocated to SBG now at the moment in Ireland, but he's a guy I've grown up with. We started boxing the same time. He went over to MMA and brought me in with him, and he's like my go-to guy for advice. And a very close friend of mine, and he's making his debut tomorrow in London. So there's a few of us going up to watch. So most of Swansea's going to be empty up there while we're all up there.
Nice. So yeah, check that out. I'm sure a lot of our listeners, watch UFC, so definitely we'll all be watching that. And again, check out his podcast. And most importantly, though, for now, check him out March 24th. This will be a second fight. And go back. You can. I'll put the link as well to the BKB official YouTube page, where you can watch the BKB 9 event, and you can watch him. Just in a fantastic performance, just very.
Thank you.
You guys got to watch it. Yeah, it's just very crisp, very clean. So I look forward to seeing your fight here next Saturday, or this upcoming Saturday. And I want you guys to watch it as well. Again, it's only $6.49, and you can get that on the Channel Fights website. I'll have that down in the description as well. So. James, thanks for coming on. We'd like to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we'd like to maybe have you come back on another time, maybe after the fight, or just when you have some downtime to be able to chat with us.
Yeah, and I say once I've got this fight out of the way now, I'll speak to my co-host and we could do like a crossover episode. It'd be good for maybe both of us to analyze, one of the UFC events and get, two different sides, because it's very rare you get someone on the other side of the ocean. They might have a different view on it, so it'd be good if we could do some sort of crossover episode as well, maybe for everyone.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. So yeah, definitely. As you guys know, out of Focus Fights, as well as I still do my Ryzen podcast as well, but this is part of Focus Fights, a new thing we're doing, so we can have things like this and talk to people like James and really promote and get out there the guys who the mainstream MMA media just they follow a few things and that's about it. We're done here personally hearing about like what Ronda had for breakfast, so we we're definitely here to promote the fighters in all different combat sports. So again, James, thanks for coming on, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Take care, guys. Thank you again.